Havisham, too, would not be understood, and although she was perfectly incomprehensible to me, I entertained an impression that there would be something coarse and treacherous in my dragging her as she really was, to say nothing of Mrs. Stella, before the contemplation of Mrs. Joe. Consequently, I said as little as I could, and had my face shoved against the kitchen wall. The worst of it was that bullying of Mr. Pumblechook preyed upon by a devouring curiosity, to be informed of all I'd seen and heard, came gaping over in his chaise cart at tea time, to have the details divulged to him, and the mere sight of the torment, with his fishy eyes and mouth open, his sandy hair inquisitively on end, and his waistcoat heaving with windy arithmetic, made me vicious in my reticence. "Well, boy," Uncle Pumblechook began as soon as he was seated in the chair of honor by the fire, "how did you get on uptown?" I answered, "Pretty well, sir," and my sister shook her fist at me. "Pretty well," Mr. Pumblechook repeated. "Pretty well is no answer. Tell us what you mean by pretty well, boy." "Whitewash on the forehead hardens the brain into a state of obstinacy, perhaps. Anyhow, with whitewash from the wall on my forehead, my obstinacy was adamantine. I reflected for some time, and then answered as if I discovered a new idea. "I mean pretty well." My sister, with an exclamation of impatience, was going to fly at me. I had no shadow of defense, for Joe was busy in the forge, when Mr. Pumblechook interposed with, "No, don't lose your temper. Leave this lad to me, ma'am. Leave this lad to me." Mr. Pumblechook then turned me towards him, as if he were going to cut my hair, and said, "First, to get our thoughts in order, 43 pence. I calculated the consequences of replying £400, and finding them against me, went as near the answer as I could, which was somewhere about 8 pence off. Mr. Pumblechook then put me through my pence table from 12 pence, make 1 shilling, up to 40 pence, make 3 and 4 pence, and then triumphantly demanded, as if he had done for me, "Now, how much is 43 pence?" To which I replied, after a long interval of reflection, "I don't know. And I was so aggravated that I almost doubt if I did know. Mr. Pumblechook worked his head like a screw to screw it out of me, and said, "Is 43 pence 7 and 6 pence 3 fardens, for instance?" "Yes," I said. Yes. And although my sister instantly boxed my ears, it was highly gratifying to me to see that the answer spoiled his joke, and brought him to a dead stop. "Boy, what like is Miss Havisham?" Mr. Pumblechook began again when he had recovered, folding his arms tight on his chest and applying the screw. "Very tall and dark," I told him. "Is she, uncle?" asked my sister. Mr. Pumblechook winked assent, from which I at once inferred that he had never seen Miss Havisham, for she was nothing of the kind. As they well might, and both repeated, "In a black velvet coach." "Yes, yes, 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 yes," said I. And Mrs. Stella, that's her niece, I think, handed her in cake and wine. Cake, 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 and wine at the coach window on a cold plate. And we all had cake and wine on cold plates, and I got up behind the coach to eat mine because she told me to. "Was anybody else there?" asked Mr. Pumblechook. "4 dogs," said I. "Large or small?" "Immense, immense, 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 immense," said I, and they fought for veal cutlets out of a silver basket, 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 basket. Mr. Pumblechook and Mrs. Joe stared at one another again in utter amazement. I was perfectly frantic, 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 a reckless witness under the torture, and would have told them anything. Where was this coach, in the name of gracious, 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 gracious? Asked my sister. In Miss Havisham's room. They stared again, but there weren't any horses to it. I added this saving clause. In the moment of rejecting for richly caparisoned coursers, which I'd had wild thoughts of harnessing. "Can this be possible, Uncle?" asked Mrs. Joe. "What can the boy mean?" Okay. That's it for today. That's it for today. That's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video. And please do comment what kind of videos you would like me to do next. Next. Good night.